Today we are going to talk about the last part or section of our scientific test, our paper airplane test. We are going to write a conclusion for it. So I'm going to walk you through how to write a conclusion, the different ways that or sentences that you can use, and the different parts that we need to include in our scientific conclusion. You'll notice that it's a little bit different than a conclusion to your stories or to your reports. In a scientific conclusion, we want to include four main things. We call this a claim, evidence, reasoning conclusion. So CER, and then we also have a lessons for the future. So we have a claim. The claim answers the scientific question, which airplane is the ultimate paper airplane? We need to make a statement that claims it. So we have here an example. The blank airplane, or even the airplane that is blank, is the best for flying far or has the best hang time, whichever one works best. Then we need our evidence. We need to share or explain our data using numbers and figures. So we made this beautiful graph. We calculated a bunch of stuff. Now we need to share all of that information that we found. So here are two different examples based on whichever one, whatever you tested. The first one is, on average, the blank airplane flew however many centimeters farther than one airplane, and blank centimeters farther than the other airplane. And then the other one is, on average, the blank airplane spent blank seconds more in the air than one airplane, and blank seconds more than in the air than the other airplane. And then last, we need to kind of explain, well, what does this all mean? We need to explain the evidence and explain the science behind it. Why did this happen? So, for example, the blank airplane went the farthest or spent the most time in the air because, and then we give some explanation. This kind of goes back to our research, goes back to your hypothesis. And if it didn't quite go as planned, we need a lessons for the future. So what would you do differently next time? For example, I had one airplane that hit a wall. And so I would say next time I would make sure that there are no obstacles in the way, because that could have skewed my data. Something like that. So let's go ahead and go through this, and I'll show you how to write it down. So here is my beautiful graph. In talking with Julian, he reminded me that I made a mistake. And so I didn't skip. I went from 140 to 150 or something like that. And so I was not going 20 by 20s. So I needed to recalculate my graph here. And then Dylan reminded me that I spelled the word effect wrong. And like the word affect with an A is a verb, whereas the word affect with an E is a noun. Another weird part of the English language. So here's my data, and we're going to use this to help us make write our information, write our conclusion. So first thing, claim. So for me, with my data, even though at one point my plane with two paper airplanes went the least far, on average, my plane that was the heaviest went the farthest. And so I'm going to write that down as my claim. I'm going to indent because it is a paragraph. The heaviest plane is the best for flying the farthest. Notice that I changed up my words as the example a little bit, and that is totally okay. All right, now I got to get my evidence. Also with the claim, I should say that you can say whether your hypothesis was correct or not. In this conclusion, I guess I didn't include saying whether you guessed it was right or wrong. And so the claim might be a good place to put that. So the heaviest plane, I might even say paper airplane. The heaviest paper airplane is the best for flying the farthest. My hypothesis was correct or was incorrect. On average, and then this is where I'm kind of just using the averages. You can go a little bit more into the data. You can say 2 out of the 3 times the paper airplane with 2 paper clips went the farthest compared to the rest of the time. You can go into as much detail as you would like. I'm giving you a simpler form, and that's okay too. So I did my little math on my Post-its here. So on average, and I will keep this over here so you can see it, the airplane, and I'm going to say with 2 paper clips, flew 11 centimeters farther than the plane with 1 paper clip and 49 centimeters farther than the plane with no paper clips. And notice that I'm not really abbreviating anything. You might be like, oh my god, this is so much work to write all this. But you're writing a scientific conclusion. That means that you are proving a point. And so we're going to practice actually writing all of those words because we need to show all of the evidence that we can get. Okay? And so I'm not going to abbreviate paper clips to PPs. I did say plane rather than paper airplane. That's probably the only thing that I'm really going to abbreviate. And then I did say cm for centimeters because that is often a common thing that we have with all scientists and all mathematicians, that they know that common language rather than PPs for paper clips. Now this is where with reasoning, this is where I'm going to want to go back to reading where the information about my hypothesis, because for me, my hypothesis was wrong because I said, well, I thought that the lightest plane would go the farthest because it would be less drag on the airplane. But thinking about my airplane, I have to figure out, well, why did that happen? And as I was reading the information again, or the article again, it talks about needing a balance of drag and gravity and thrust and lift. And I ended up putting the paper clips on the front, which I think actually helped with the lift a little bit. And so I'm going to explain that maybe that's why. And so because I'm still trying to figure it out, I'm going to use these next 2 parts, the reasoning and the lessons for the future, to kind of talk about what I would do next time and how how I'm not as sure and I want to learn more. Because that's the really cool thing about science, is that pretty much science never ends. And so once we do a complete scientific test, we're left with more and more questions and wanting to do more and more tests. And I hope that you continue doing some of these tests as well. So instead of saying the heaviest airplane went the farthest because, I'm going to end up saying I think. I think the heaviest airplane went the furthest because I put the paper clips at the front, which helped with lift. Next time, I would like to test the position of the paper clips. Notice that I changed that last sentence. Oh, you can't see that. Notice that I changed that last sentence to be what I would do for the future, what I might test in the future. I did have one hit the wall, and so I might want to write that down as well. But this is, I found that this was more important for this conclusion, talking about the future. So, in conclusion to the conclusion video, I would like you to write a conclusion that has your claim, evidence, reasoning, and then a lesson for the future. I used these example sentence starters for each sentence, and even though it's a lot of words, probably about 5 sentences, I would like you to really practice writing all of those sentences. If you need more paper, go ahead and flip it over, and you can write as much as you would like on that side as well. All right, I can't wait to see what your results are.